Hello and welcome to the Monday show here on the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by our Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes. So much to talk about on this week's episode. Not only Newcastle United's fantastic win over Manchester United, but also the small matter of the Tyne derby being back in business. There's also the injury to Nick Pope. Will Newcastle United really go out and sign David De Gea? All that and more to come. This is the Everything is Black and White podcast. Please like, follow, and share the podcast. Let's get on with the show. Aaron, how are we doing on this cold and damp Monday afternoon?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is cold and damp, and I think we should just start off by showing people that are watching us live on Facebook what you've got on your hands at the moment, because you can't turn the heating on. I mean, look
Yeah,
at that. For people that aren't
fingerless glove.
watching live and they're listening, he's got fingerless gloves on, because he can't turn the heating on in his in-laws' house. So
Yeah, just be clear, I'm not being tight here. I'm at the in-laws, but their mantra is put an extra layer on. So I've got joggers underneath my jeans. I've got 3 shirts on, a hoodie, and gloves indoors. It is that cold. So I'm just waiting for my wife to get back with my little baby. So then I have to turn the heating on because you've got to keep the house warm for a baby. For a grown man, not so much, it appears. But yeah, absolutely Baltic. Did you have a good weekend, Aaron?
yeah, good. I mean, look, not too much going on. Just a little boring 1-0, and then an FA Cup third round draw, which didn't really throw up anything. So yeah, not too bad. What about yourself?
Well, I had a very Christmassy weekend. I met Santa, created a Christmas bauble where you put the child's footprint in the paint, and I put up a Christmas tree shockingly early. And that was all before Newcastle thumped Man United. But before we get into that result, I just want to give a quick shout out to a man who worked behind the scenes on the podcast and more widely across our social media platforms. Our pal and colleague Ash has left our company, and you might have seen reports in the media about the changes going on here, and we won't go into that, but we felt it was just a good time to thank Ash for what he's done in helping boosting the podcast, the video work, the social media, and just the tune coverage across our site, really. So I think for me now, and we just want to say thank you very much to Ash, and good luck in what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a very, very sore miss from the team, Moash.
Certainly is. Right, let's get on with the football because it was a fantastic performance by Newcastle United. And I have to say, I expected it. I don't think many people from Newcastle United persuasion expected anything else because we all know how good Newcastle United are, and we all know how massively inconsistent Manchester United are. And in truth, Aaron, look, it was 1-0. It could have been 3. It could have been 4. Maybe it could have been more. Newcastle United, they're just bloody brilliant, aren't they?
Yeah, it was really weird because before the Chelsea game a week earlier, I wasn't too confident about whether Newcastle would win. Obviously, factoring all their injuries, factoring the point that Chelsea had obviously started picking up results. Whereas on Saturday, I think it was just the complete other way. I'd never been more confident that Newcastle were going to win. But the only thing I didn't expect was the sheer level of dominance of the performance and just how woeful Manchester United would be. I mean, let's not beat about the bush here. That was probably the worst away performance we've ever seen from a team at St James's Park. Certainly in the last couple of seasons, I cannot get over how much they just did not want to play football, how much they just sat back, how many sort of shots they allowed on their goal. But let's not take anything away from Newcastle as well. I thought it was a very, very convincing performance apart from in front of goal. Some of the football they were playing was absolutely fantastic. I know we'll talk about it in a bit more depth, but really, really positive. The only thing I would say is that, it was a little bit of a nervy final 10 minutes when Manchester United started attacking.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the performance from Manchester United, you're right, and you say it was probably one of the worst away performances from Team St James Park, but more just the manner. Sorry, just the kind of where Man United are believed to be in terms of one of the top 6. Every time they go on a good run, they're title challengers. I mean, they're nothing of the sort, and Newcastle United have now beaten them. Was it in the cup? I think the stat is
Three
beaten them
times.
3 times consecutively in the league for the first time since 1922. This was I want to say it was another message sent out to the top teams, but actually Newcastle United just continue to send this message out every single week.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Arsenal, Chelsea, and Manchester United beating at St James's Park in the last 3 weeks. And I feel like if that had happened 2 years ago, you wouldn't be able to shut up about. Whereas now it's just so run of the mill. It's as if it just gets forgotten about. And I think I know I shouldn't think like this, but I just look back to February and think if we had played that Carabao Cup final in pretty much any other month, we would have had that silverware. I mean, we've beaten them 3 times since that cup final, and pretty convincingly. And I just think, I mean, they are a team in absolute. They're a real mess. Rashford, I thought was embarrassing. I thought Martial was really really poor. God knows what's happened between Rafael Varane and Ten Hag from to, feel the need to put Shaw and Maguire at centre back. And I mean, look, I don't think there's going to be anybody listening to this podcast or in the comments right now that are really losing too much sleep over how bad Manchester United are at the minute. So we'll be taking quite a lot of pleasure. But yeah, let's take nothing away from the fact Newcastle really, really made them look poor on Saturday as well.
I actually thought Manchester United were an embarrassment. You had two teams who'd played Champions League football, two teams who had to travel, two games, tough games respectively. One team made 4 changes and the other made none. And yet it was the team that was unchanged, Newcastle United, that just had more energy about them. And right from the start, you noticed the difference, the intensity that Newcastle United brought to the game. Just going that extra mile right from the word go. Like, it's not a surprise to us who follow Newcastle United week in, week out, but it just deserves, every time we talk about it, I don't get sick of talking about it because it just deserves praise and praise and praise, but especially against Manchester United because of the fact that Newcastle United played 98 minutes in Paris, had the heartache, that VAR decision, remained unchanged, and as I say, right from kickoff, you could just tell they wanted it more.
And I'm going to be completely honest. I mean, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I think arguably you could say that the match was won before ball was kicked, and that was because about an hour or two before kickoff, I was huddled inside in the media room, staying away from the cold, and I had BT Sport on. And Ten Hag comes out and he's speaking to Lindsay Hipgrave, and he says, "Well, look, Newcastle are at an advantage here. They played Saturday, we played Sunday. They played Tuesday, we played Wednesday." And I thought, okay, if that's what Ten Hag's really thinking, that's a bit strange. And then you had him saying, "Look, we've got to rotate. We can't have 3 games in a week." And I was thinking, well, look at Eddie Howe, who's having to field the same 11 players and only bring on 1 sub. And then Eddie Howe came out about 10 minutes later and spoke to the presenters, and they asked him a question about, how hard is it not to feel negative about the situation. And Eddie Howe comes out and gives this typical Eddie Howe speech about how, they can't let victim mentality sink in, and they haven't. And I just thought, before a ball had even been kicked, you've got one manager just making no excuses, and you've got the other who's got the luxury of, bringing on 150 million pounds worth of talent off the bench, setting his stall out early about what the excuses are going to be. And then, I mean, on the pitch, as you've said, I completely agree. I thought the performance was embarrassing. Rashford, I know I've just touched on it. What a shameful performance that was from him. And I think if Gareth Southgate was watching wherever he was, Marcus Rashford's got 57 caps for England, and you're telling me that he's going to get in next summer ahead of Anthony Gordon? Surely not.
Well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? And there was a one attack in the would have been the first half, and they go down the left, and Marcus Rashford does not track back. Marcus Rashford gets back to the box just in time to defend the corner, and that for me summed up the difference between Anthony Gordon and Marcus Rashford. The levels of energy, the levels of commitment, so vastly different. Eddie Howe, speaking afterwards, was asked about Anthony Gordon. In fact, I mean, Aaron, you were in the actual press conference, but for those who weren't, which will be most of the listeners, Anthony Gordon dominated that press conference. It's what anyone and everyone wanted to talk about. And there was a really interesting line from Eddie Howe, and he said, sometimes we have to take Anthony Gordon off the training pitch when we think he's done enough, because he just wants to be on there every single minute, every single hour of the day when there's not a match on. Can you see Marcus Rashford doing that? Right now, I can't.
No, absolutely not. And I think the difference, and I think the difference was exaggerated even more because they were playing on the same wing. And as you say, you had Gordon tracking back, really offering a lot of support to Tino Livramento. Even on the opposite flank, you had Miggy and Garnacho, just 2 opposite players doing opposite levels of work. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one thing with Gordon is, I mean, yes, look, let's take nothing away from the form he's in. He's probably in the form of his life at the minute, goal scoring wise. But I always go back to that afternoon, that Saturday afternoon in West London and Brentford, where he kicked off on the pitch, and that was such a turning point. And even this week, Anthony Gordon was given an interview where he said he had to earn Eddie Howe's trust again. And our colleague Kieran Kelly asked Eddie Howe that in the press conference. He says, has he done that? And I don't think anybody can argue the fact that he's definitely, more than made up for that spot earlier in the year.
Well, it's interesting because how actually his answer to that was something along the lines of, he's always had my trust.
Mm-hmm.
He just had to show that he understand what they wanted from him, and he's clearly doing that. As you say, the goal scoring, I think it's five goals and 2 assists in the last 8 games. He's just enjoying the best football of his life. But yeah, Man United, they're just a joke of a side. From what we remember them growing up, they're absolutely nowhere near that. There's no passion, there's no fight. And I think against certain teams, Aaron, despite what they lack, because they've got 2 or 3 quality individuals, you've got your Bruno Fernandes, you've got your Eriksen, they can get away with it and they can score a late goal. They can, get a goal against the run of play and everything looks rosy. Because if you look at the form table and you weren't watching them actually play, you'd be thinking, what's the issue with Manchester United? But against the Newcastle United side that fights for every ball, that goes the extra yard, where every single person, whether they're playing or not, is believing in the manager. And that's what Newcastle have got above all else, is a commitment to the cause. You will get found out very quickly. We saw it with Chelsea and we saw it against Manchester United.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely a temperament thing there. I mean, Alan Shearer probably summed it up right on Match Day, where he said there's too many bad eggs in that Manchester United team. And I mean, you look at all levels of the club. I mean, look at their transfer business in recent years. 85 million on Anthony, who, by the way, doesn't even look like a Premier League footballer at the minute. Jadon Sancho, 80 million. They courted him for 3 seasons. He's fell out with the manager. You've got a 4-time Champions League winner sat on the bench, Rafael Varane. He can't get a game. And then you look at the flip side on Newcastle and everyone pulling together and everybody working for each other and that team spirit they've got. I mean, we all know it should have been more than 1-0 on Saturday anyway, but I mean, it definitely should have been, just given on, the difference of the 2 sides.
It's the difference, isn't it? Everyone expected Newcastle to spend millions and millions of pounds in the transfer market, but what they've actually done is they've not bought a team of egos. They've bought a team of hardworking characters, all pulling in the same direction, all believing in the plan. Whereas Manchester United consistently have gone out and bought players who, disrupt the dressing room. If they're not playing, they will kick up a fuss. If they don't get the pass, they'll not be happy with it. If they lose a game, they'll not show their responsibility because it was someone else's mistake at the back. And I tell you what, actually, Harry Maguire gets a lot of stick, but at least he stands up. At least he's counted. And the differences again there. Newcastle United have got 16, 18, 20, 25 players. Most of them not involved, because you can only have a squad of 16, what have you, on a match day. But they're all prepared to take responsibility. They're all fighting for the same thing. And when you've got that, that can count. That can count for more in many ways than ability.
Yeah, and I also think on that point, it's just made me think of something there. It probably goes a lot back to Howe, because let's just say Jose Mourinho or Eric Ten Hag or Antonio Conte was managing Newcastle in April when Gordon storms off on the touchline and clashes with him. There's absolutely nothing to say that he wouldn't have gone down the same route as Sancho or Dele Alli and these players who fall out with the manager and there's no second chance. I mean, with Eddie Howe, even pretty much as soon as that final whistle went at Brentford, he was moved on from it. He said he'll deal with it internally and he'll sort Anthony Gordon's temperament out, and he has already. So I think huge credit needs to go to him. I mean, we're talking about transfer fees now, and I can't believe we're 15 minutes in and we haven't mentioned him. Tino Livramento, such a young player for such a big amount of money, given his age and given, quite a bad ACL injury not too long ago. He starts against Manchester City. He has an absolute blinder. You think, how can he top that? He comes on at Old Trafford. He plays even better. Then he's in the Champions League playing even better than that. And then he's dropping a man of the match performance on Saturday. I mean, I've just got no idea where this kid's ceiling is already.
Absolutely fantastic. And just on how I think it goes back to the point I'm making about the players. There's not an ego there. There's not an ego with Eddie Howe. Could you imagine how some managers would be acting if they've had the 2 years Eddie Howe has had at Newcastle United?
Yeah.
They'd be building their own statues down Grey Street. Eddie Howe's just thinking about the next game, and that's the difference. And you're right, the example you give about Anthony Gordon. But yeah, I mean, Tino Livramento, like, what more can we say? The lad just gets better and better, and for such a young man, the way he reads the game, and that's what impresses me the most. You know, you can be a good defender and you can be good with the ball at your feet and going forward. You know, it's great that you've got that, but he's just got such a footballing brain, and you can see it. You know, and like you say, to be putting in these performances so early on after such a big injury, wow, like he's only going to get better as well. And I think what's really interesting, there was a lot of discussion, wasn't there, about the fee, about whether Newcastle needed impact players for now instead of what people assumed Tino Livramento was going to be, a player 2 or 3 years down the line. But hey, you look at him, he's making the impact right now. And Dan Burn, I'm sorry, he's not getting back in that side left back.
Not think.
No.
Well, this is the thing about Livramento, and Eddie Howe was actually asked about it on Saturday night. I mean, I completely agree with everything you said, but it's the fact that he's doing this in a position that isn't natural for him. He wasn't signed as a left back. Yes, he's played there.
Do you know what, right? Just to let the listeners know, right? When I was this morning, when I was doing the notes for the pod, I thought Aaron praised me last week for predicting something and saying it's come right. And it was ironically about Livramento. And I had a flash and I thought, oh, Aaron said something in the summer and it was about Livramento, and he's right. And it was the fact that you kept saying you can play a left back, you can play a left back, you can play left back. And everybody in the comments came back and said he's never played left back in his whole entire career. What do you know, Aaron Stokes? Ladies and gents, Aaron Stokes knows quite a lot.
Well, it's only taken us a couple of months to be proved right, but better late than never. But I mean, it is. This is a player who, yes, could play left back, but he was signed as a right back, as Trippier's backup. He played the majority of last season for Southampton and a lot of his youth career at Chelsea on the right. We've now seen him in 3 positions, and even when he's playing further up the pitch in front of Trippier, he looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, we're talking about going out and getting a backup goalkeeper. Livramento at the minute could probably do a job in between the sticks at the minute. He'd stick him anywhere. Third choice striker, maybe, anyone. He just looks absolutely fantastic. And I think there must have been a lot of pressure on him. One, the price tag's huge. He's moving from the south of the country where he's lived his entire life to a new club, not expected to get minutes this early. You know, he talked very, very well in his first interview about how he knew what the job was, and that was to be backed up for Kieran Trippier and learn from him. But he's stepped up, and I mean, I think I agree with you. As much as I love Dan Burn, on current, reading, it's going to be tough for him to get in ahead of Livramento, he hasn't put a foot wrong so far.
Lousy says Tino is bad news for big Dan Burn. Graham asks, do you think Burn is going to struggle to get back in the team? As me and Aaron have just said there, we do. And Lousy also asks, or adds rather, spare thought for Lewis Hall. I bet he was expecting a bit more game time, and now he's having to watch Tino absolutely bossing it. But, that just proves there's always a chance for you to step up. To be fair, it's Matty Target that I feel the worst for, because, when he eventually recovers from this injury, he's potentially going to find himself, 4th choice left back?
And look, I'm going to be honest, we're talking here about Livramento, keeping Dan Burn out of the team. There's absolutely nothing to suggest that by the time Dan Burn's back, Tino Livramento has picked up an injury, because if we've learned one thing from this season, it's Newcastle United players are going to get injured.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle having a horrendous luck with injuries, and we will indeed speak about Nick Pope in a wee moment. But just on Livramento, let's talk about Anthony Gordon, because those two terrorised Manchester United on Saturday. They could not handle that pair at all. And we love our pairings of right backs and right wingers and left backs and left wingers. We've got another fantastic pair there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just fantastic. I love the fact that Livramento gets so far forward and he's happy to just take the ball up the pitch. As you said, he reads the game so well at the back. There's a couple of times where Manchester United tried to spring a counter-attack and there was just no getting through him. And I just think Gordon's just so fearless. The amount of times we see him picking that ball up and taking Wan-Bissaka on, and you can't grumble with the goals that he's had into his game. I think that's 4 in his last 4 home games. The first person to do that since Shearer, I believe. So yeah, look, absolutely fantastic. And look, these players are probably going to be running on fumes, but you would not bet against them going to Everton and getting a result on Thursday.
But we say they're running on fumes. I expect them to be running on fumes against Manchester United, and right to the death as well, bar 1 or 2 Poor Miggy looked a bit stretched, but they were just working their socks off. They was chasing every single ball, and it is just tremendous the amount of stamina they've got, the work rate. I'd love to see the diet plans. I'd love to see the workout. As you can hear, the clock's going off there because I'm in the in-laws and they've got one of them ridiculous grandfather clocks. So we hear that in the background. It's not a bell making sure that you guys know I made a good point. It is the clock. But yes, let's talk about that fitness and stamina, Aaron, because even though we know they've got it and we see it week in, week out, I'm still sitting there after 75, 80 minutes going, how on earth are they doing that? There was no way, right? Having started in PSG at Paris, and then the same 11 starts again against Manchester United, that those lot should be running like they were with 80 minutes on the clock. No way. It's superhuman, supernatural.
Well, I just keep laughing at the fact that pretty much every other episode you keep bringing up that you want to go and do the bleep test with Eddie Howe. You would not last 30 seconds, mate. And that's not a gripe on your stamina. It's just how fit these players must be because, I mean, everybody's spoken about it. Wilson's obviously talked about it a lot. Gordon talked about it when he came in. I think players that arrive at the club who don't maybe know too much about what it's going to be like behind the scenes are going to get a big shock at how fitness-driven it is. I think it's, as you say, it's just credit the players that they're playing so many games in such a short period of time, and they're managing to come through it. That has just reminded me as well on my last point that Gordon did actually come off with a little bit of a tightness in his hip. Hopefully he's okay for Thursday. Eddie Howe, doesn't really know how serious that one is, but fingers crossed that's not too bad as well.
I'm sure he'll be fine. A little trip back to Goodison Park. I'm sure he'll be doing everything to make sure he's all right with that. To kind of says, I'm not sure I'd like the diet plans, to be frank. But I didn't say I would agree with the diet plans. Yes, I agree. You've given the little chocolate icon there. I mean, I wouldn't be giving up me chocolate. Philip says, defensively, Livramento looks fantastic left back. He's been good going forward, but he isn't quite as effective going forward, in my opinion. He's like a winger on the right, but his main job is to defend, and he hasn't put a foot wrong. The lad looks immense. And Les says, I beg your pardon, Mr. Musgrove. Gary V and myself have been screaming for Tino at left back and keeping Trips on the right. So I apologise, Les. I don't doubt that for a moment. Ian says Livramento, even though he's right-footed, he gives us a better balance to the team and a threat going forward than Dan Burn doesn't have. Loads of great comments about Livramento. Just, everyone absolutely loves him. And Gary says, I don't have to get off the sofa to have a little tightness in my hip. Guess it comes to us all, Gary. Just the final word on Anthony Gordon. You mentioned how fearless he is, Aaron. And I just love the fact that in his head, he's just going to go, right, I'm just going to run at them because I'm going to get past them, or B, they're going to have to foul us. And C, if I do end up losing the ball, I know that I've got enough that I will get straight back to my feet and get up there and stop them. We didn't see that with Vincent Maximin, with all due respect. We haven't seen it with a few wingers. But Anthony Gordon, I think the first point is the most important point. He just believes he can get past any defender in front of him.
Yeah, he absolutely can. And I think he offers so much more, to his all-round game than Maxi, which I think is what we were crying out for. I think the one thing that's impressed me is the positioning. He's getting himself in the position to score goals. I mean, Saturday night, the perfect example, getting there when I think it was Almiron missed it in the middle. And look, I mean, we're talking about Livramento and Burn, and people are in the comments talking about Botman and Lascelles. Spare a thought for poor £35 million signing Harvey Barnes, because at the minute he's just a complete afterthought. And I know that's obviously because of his toe injury, and it looks like he's probably going to be out for a couple more weeks. But again, I know we're laughing saying how does he get back in the team. He probably will, given the run of games and the injuries. But I remember at the start of the season we were both talking about, right, well, who starts on the left? I mean, I think we've got the answer now, even when they're both fit.
Yeah, 100%. But it'll be a big boost to have Harvey Barnes back when he does indeed return. Let's talk about Kieran Trippier. Another assist for him, and at times, and this shows you how bad Man United were, but how on the ball Newcastle were to capitalise on it. Trippier and Livramento at times were playing as midfielders. That was how much space they had. And he gets down the wing, beautiful cross into the box. Anthony Gordon's just got to tap it in. I mean, look, he's brilliant defensively. He plays like a man who is not 33. He plays like a man who's still in the peak of his career. Some would argue he's at the peak of his career still. He's that fit. But going forward, he's just something else, isn't he?
I mean, what's it, 7 assists for the season? I mean, it's just ridiculous for a right back who, as Roger says in the comments here, was just absolutely outstanding. Again, I think what we've seen this season, certainly the last couple of months, is just that the raising of the game from him, even at his age. He's been absolutely fantastic. He leads. He was fantastic at the back. I thought he pocketed Garnacho all night. I just thought it was an absolutely fantastic performance.
Were you shocked? Because I was certainly taken aback by just how easy it was for Newcastle's defence to pass the ball through Man United's midfield, and if they didn't have the ball, Newcastle, for the defence to find the space to receive the ball. I mean, Fabian Schär was just able to stroll right on through, and it was embarrassing from a Man United point of view. But again, you've got to tip your hat to Newcastle for having the desire and the know-how and the nous to capitalise on it.
Absolutely. I think you made the point before I jumped in there, and it was Fabian Schär. There was a couple of times he picks up the ball and he thinks, you know what, I'm under such little pressure here. I'm just going to take a little walk. And there's a great moment. I don't know if people have seen it. It was highlighted quite a lot on TNT Sports with Genius and McCoist about there's a moment in the first half where Shaw picks up the ball and he runs through 2 or 3 players, and Rashford and Martial both sort of half-heartedly go to tackle him. And Ten Hag storms onto the touchline and screams at Martial, and they sort of have a little bit of a back and forward with each other, throwing sort of insults at each other. And Ten Hag's clearly saying, how are you just letting Fabian Schär run through like that? I thought every single one of them had far too much time with the ball. Schär, again, I feel like the last 6 weeks, all we've done is come on this pod and talk about how good he's been. He's enjoying one of his best periods of form. I mean, at his age, with his injury record, isn't too easy. Yeah, it was just a very, very good all-round performance. I don't think you can pick anybody out who had a bad game, really.
No, but we're going to spend the next hour talking about everybody. Fabian Schär, that block, unfortunately, it also led to Nick Pope getting injured, but that block, because the ball was heading in, what a fantastic block that was.
Yeah, it absolutely was. Yeah, it was fantastic, and it does look like the ball was flying towards the top corner. It was just a shame that obviously what came after it is the only really the negative from Saturday night.
Garth Crooks has compared Fabian Schär to Philip Albert, the way he was going forward against Manchester United. Unfortunately, there was no chip over the goalkeeper this time around. And Jamal Lascelles, look, I keep praising him week in, week out. I think certain people expect the level of performance to drop. We've got a lot of people in the comments asking whether Botman would walk straight into this team again. I don't think he would. Look, on his day, on paper, a better defender. But look at what Jamal Lascelles is doing. And there was a moment yesterday when Man United hit on the counter. I think it came from either a Newcastle corner or free kick down on the left-hand side. And Jamal Lascelles belted it back. To be fair, alongside 2 or 3 others. But he was the man that got the challenge in and then carried the ball forward again. He just seems to have found that extra step of pace. He's reading the game better. He's leading the club as good as he ever did. And I honestly do not believe if Sven Botman was deemed fit tomorrow, Jamal Lascelles himself being fit to go against Everton, I don't think Botman would get back in this side.
I don't know, because I'm really interested to know what people think in the comments, because I think a lot of people will say Lascelles stays in, but I think you also have people itching for Botman back. Me personally, I think it would be very, very harsh to take Lascelles out when, I mean, they've put, so little feet wrong. It's just ridiculous. So if it was up to me, I'd like to see Lascelles get another couple of weeks in, but I've got a little suspicion that once Botman's back and up and running, not just back fit, up and running, good few weeks of training under his belt, I think it won't be long before he's back in.
We've got kind of phrase saying if Lascelles gets booked, he'll miss a game. So that's maybe Botman's way back in. But again, we're talking about Botman coming back in. I mean, I don't think we're going to see him before 2024, if I'm being totally honest. That's just my opinion. But I think he's going to have to get back up to scratch. And after such a long layoff and the injury that he's had, you're not going to want to rush him back. So as long as Schär and Lascelles are fit enough and still going, I could see him, not coming back until maybe the FA Cup game against a certain Sunderland. But then you wouldn't drop Lascelles for that if he's fit, because he's the captain. He's been performing brilliant. So who knows? We will get on to that FA Cup tie in a moment. I thought Bruno and Joe Linton were excellent on Saturday, like a proper unit in the middle. Joe Linton stupidly getting himself booked, unfortunately. That does, I think, rule him out against Everton, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was his 5th. Or maybe not. You're going to double check that. But
Yeah, I'm not actually too sure.
You're going to double check. But I just thought that those two together in the middle were fantastic again. And Lewis Miley as well, especially in the first half. Lewis Miley looked really comfortable. Just a really good collective 3 across the middle.
Yeah, I think for me, and I don't know if people agree with this, but I actually thought Bruno was the best of the 3 on Saturday. I thought he had one of those games where he does everything right, but he goes completely under the radar. And I haven't heard anybody talking about him rightly because Trippier and Tino and Gordon are getting the plaudits. But when you actually boil down at the stats, more touches, more passes, more completed passes, more pass accuracy than pretty much any midfielder on the pitch. And I think when Bruno and Trippier have those games, instantly everybody's lifted. It was one of those games where those two really set the tempo. Saying that, though, I mean, we're talking about Livramento raising his game every week. Lewis Miley, drops an absolute 10 out of 10 against Chelsea, then goes and does it in Paris, and had another really, really, really good game on Saturday night. And the thing that impressed me most about Lewis Miley is just how calm he is. On and off the ball, he reads the game so well. He marks who he needs to mark, and every time he passes the ball and every time he receives the ball, even if it's the most simplest pass in the world, he makes it. And I just think it was another good chunk of the press conference, dedicated to him on Saturday night. Eddie Howe, full of praise from him again. And it was interesting how he was going to line up, obviously, against Kobe Mainoo, who was Man United's 18-year-old superstar. Everyone's raving about the future he's going to have, but I thought he was really, really nullified by Miley, especially in that first half.
Roger says, agree with you, Aaron. Bruno command the middle naturally looked thoroughly terrific. John says, totally agree. Bruno ran the midfield and his pass Trippier was sublime. Back to the Bruno of last season. And Peter says there's just a balance between the 3 of them. And I totally agree. I think Lewis Miley does the simple stuff. That's what he does. Doesn't do anything complicated. If it needs to go back, he passes it back. If it needs to go left, he goes left. Doesn't always have to look for that Hollywood ball. Bruno just wants the ball all the time and he's up and down, and Joe Linton's just the tank in the middle, which if you're the man who's unfortunately about to get bowled over by him, you're going to feel it. And, Man United couldn't handle the physicality of Bruno at all. Really good performance by the trio. Isak then up top, he was dropping deep for the ball. His link-up play was quite good. Didn't get on the score sheet this time around. I think he was looking a little bit tired again. He'll start, you would imagine, on Thursday, which again might be a bit of an issue going forward. But look, tremendous effort from him again.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be too critical because I love Alexander Isak, but the last couple of games, I don't know whether he's just not up to scratch. I just don't know whether he's snatching at chances. We saw that one really early against PSG where he put it over the bar. We saw 1 or 2 on Saturday in the first half where he sort of snatches at it and put one wide. I don't know. I think that he's maybe feeling the effects of being thrown straight back in. But I think somebody mentioned it in the comments forward. I think it might have been John Steele, but it was so long ago I can't remember. But someone made a good point and you actually agreed with it, and that is the link-up play was so good. I love the fact he drops so deep and he's on the halfway line, but he's still making things work. But I just think we're maybe not seeing Isak at his brilliant best. And you're clearly not at your brilliant best as well, because for someone who's in charge of the trivia and getting the stats right, Joe Linton has been booked 3 times this season. So why on earth you thought this was going to be his 5th and his ban? I don't know where you've got that from.
Someone next to me was telling me it was his 5th. That's why you should never believe.
8 o'clock kickoff. I'll have been on the drink all day, man. You can't trust someone in the stands telling you that.
Yeah, that's what it was, my mistake. But look, on Isak, it goes back to the point we made it a couple of weeks ago, and we'll not dive into this discussion because I'm sure the listeners are sick of me and you having a bit of a barney about it. But how you can expect Isak after the injury to be at his top standards set by him, I'm not sure you can. And we're going to see. I think he'll start on Thursday, but after that, I think it might become a bit of a struggle for him. And then with Anthony Gordon in the form of his life, do you really want to move Anthony Gordon off the left? I think this is why Newcastle might try and bring the young lad back from Feyenoord, even though there's no release clause in the loan deal. Otherwise, they're going to have to go out and try and sign a striker.
One good bit of piece of positive news after Pope's injuries is that it looks like Wilson's a lot closer to returning than any of the others. Expecting him to potentially be back in training in the next couple of weeks, which would be a big boost before that hectic start of January. But if he has a setback or Isak, struggles for fitness, then I think we'll be revisiting that famous everything's black and white topic before too long.
And Gary says, I think, not today. No, we're gonna brush over it. Gary says, I think Isak has been told to pace himself because he's our only striker. Geordie Tune for Life says, I thought Isak's first touch in general play was excellent, really impressive. And I don't think I would disagree with any of those comments. It was just, like we said, we could pick several players as man of the match, but I think most people will actually go for Tino Livramento. Just on the tactical side of it, Aaron, it was really interesting to see that, especially when Newcastle had the ball with Nick Pope at the back, it kind of went to three up top. So you had Gordon and Miggy coming really quite central to Isak. And then you also had, when Newcastle were going forward, they were pressing Manchester United as well as they could. And I'll say it again, Newcastle United are arguably the best pressing side in the Premier League. But to add to that, you had Trippier and Livramento going down the wings and really forcing the issue. And tactically, Eddie Howe got it absolutely spot on, both defensively and offensively.
Yeah, well, I think when Manchester United make it that easy for you by sitting so defensively and only really trying to spring sort of sporadic counter-attacks, it was very easy. But then I think you couple that with the fact it's Livramento on the left now instead of Byrne, who is, as we've already touched on, very, very comfortable going forward. It gives you that freedom to maybe stick Miggy and Gordon a little bit inside. You've got Livramento bombing down that left as Trippier does. Yeah, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I think every single metric you look at, you saw the dominance on display. More possession, more passes, more touches, more ball carries in the midfield. Everything that Newcastle needed to win, they did. You would have just maybe liked to see a couple more goals if you're being picky.
Yeah, you were a bit nervous, weren't you, towards the end? And let's talk about the Nick Pope injury. Then Martin Dubravka comes off the bench for him. It looks bad. Unconfirmed reports that it could be up to 5 months. It looks like he's hit that shoulder that kept him out between July 2018 and January 2019. So it was a long period of time he didn't play football. That is a massive blow because he's just played his best game of his Newcastle career in Paris. He's then not really had much to do at all. And it's one of those where you could do it 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, and you would never do what he did, i.e. damage his shoulder bad enough to keep him out for 5 months.
Well, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. How many times must he have done that dive this week alone, never mind in his career? And as you say, it's not the first time he's done the injury. Anyhow, I think we all could tell as soon as he went down, he instantly signalled to the bench. Eddie Howe came up straight after and said, look, it doesn't look good at all. You've touched on it there. So he did the injury in July 2018, had surgery at the very back end of that month, and then didn't play again until middle of December for the under-23. So that's August, September, October. 4.5 months, 5 months roughly. Tim Krul did the injury in April 2013. He was out for 127 days. But then he did come back next season and play 36 appearances in the Premier League. So it proves that you can come back from it and perform. And Petr Cech did it as well in 2014, I believe. And he was out for 3 months. So it does maybe vary on the severity of it. But I think, even with surgery and even the best case scenario, you're still probably looking until March, April, until he's back. It's going to be a big ask for him to play again this season. And this leads us on to the question of, Dubravka, and we've obviously seen David De Gea linked by one newspaper today already. I must say he is the only free agent out there that I even knew the name of, never mind what I take. So very limited options if Newcastle want to go down that route. Some will say they don't need to. Some will say they've got enough. I mean, we've been talking about how they had 3 goalkeepers on the bench last week. I don't know. What's your take on De Gea?
It's interesting because I thought he was pretty poor. I thought he was pretty poor at Manchester United, but now he's left, and then you watch Onana.
He looks brilliant.
You actually realise he was probably very good. And look, you look back on last season, and he made some errors, but he didn't half keep Man United in some of them games, and the amount of points he earned Man United. I think there was one game against Brentford which they may have won. I know they got beat 4-0 away, but I think there was one game at home where he kept them in the game. They went up and scored, and they didn't deserve it. Look, he's a very good shot stopper. He's probably better with the ball at his feet, but it's interesting because I look at him and I look at Marcus Rashford and I look at Sancho, and I think, are they poor players, or are they really good players? They're just in a situation at Manchester United where it's just got on top of them. The atmosphere is not good. The manager is just going to go for you. He's not going to work you like Eddie Howe, where I think someone put in the comments before, Eddie Howe's mantra is everyone gets a second chance, you don't get a third. I just wonder if the situation, if it was a different club, different atmosphere, different time, maybe we wouldn't have this kind of nagging doubt about De Gea being an error-prone goalkeeper. That being said, look, his wage, 375,000 at Manchester United per week.
Well, he's currently on nothing a week, so I don't think he's asking for that.
Well, I'm sure if he's been saving, he'll be all right. The interest on that will pay his mortgage for a wee while. But look, that would have to come down. He didn't sign a new contract at Manchester United, which was reportedly meant to be a bit of a pay cut. So he would come in and you would see, even if he agreed to a pay cut, he'd probably be the highest earner. You would think he'd be on maybe the same wage as Bruno, which I don't think would be just. I don't know about the ego side of things. Would he pass the counter test of Eddie Howe? I'm not really sure. And the other question, as you mentioned there, I mean, Martin Dubravka, he's more than capable of filling in till the end of the season. He's a good goalkeeper. He's probably better actually with the ball, with the distribution as well. Is he as good a shot stopper? No, he's not, because Nick Pope for me is the best shot stopper in the Premier League. But do you go and disrupt your wage structure for someone who's only going to be here 6 months? I don't know. I don't think you do.
It's a tricky one for me under here because, I don't think people can really question that he was the best goalkeeper in the world for a good 5 or 6 years. I thought the early days at Manchester United, once he got over those blips, he was generally the best goalkeeper in the league, if not the world. Recent years, we've obviously seen mistakes creep into his game a little bit. It was a big, big gripe of Manchester United fans when he was there. It's okay, he makes too many mistakes. But when you look at some of those managers before Ten Hag came in and the amount of shots Manchester United used to concede on goal, he was getting peppered every game, a little bit like Pickford used to be at Everton. Very good shot stopper. I don't think I would grumble. And let's be completely honest, just because he was on £375,000 a week at Manchester United, as stupid as this is going to sound, I don't instantly think he would come in and be our top earner, because he would be coming in as a stopgap because he hasn't got a club. And I don't know the reasons why. We're now in December and he left Manchester United in July. He doesn't have a club. But I think it would be very, very hard for him to go in and say, I want to be on £200,000 a week. I think Newcastle would probably look at it and say, well, no, you're all right. I think we'll keep Martin Dubravka. So, and look, let's just paint the picture a little bit about what the story is that's came out this morning. The Daily Mail report that Newcastle are, open to maybe exploring a deal for David De Gea on the back of Nick Pope's injury short term. There's nothing to say David De Gea wants it. There's nothing to say that any contact's been made. And there's actually nothing to say that Newcastle United might not just spend the next month having Martin Dubravka as number 1, Loris Karius as number 2, and if for whatever reason things don't work out, they can go out in January and say, we don't even need to go and get De Gea because the transfer window's open and we can go and get, I can't even think of a name, but somebody to fill in for Dubravka or would fill in, on a 6-month period. So I think, I don't know, I'm a little bit torn on the whole De Gea situation. I do like him, though. I like David De Gea.
We've got Gary saying De Gea is still a good goalkeeper, like a lot of players at Man United, they go still. But we do have a lot of support for Martin Dubravka in the comments. And yeah, for me, it's Martin Dubravka, will be Newcastle number 1. Like you said, look, there's enough time to trial it. There's enough games coming up for you to see how Martin Dubravka does. And then maybe in January, they look ahead and think, okay, do we maybe even move forward in the schedule when we were going to buy the next goalkeeper to improve on Nick Pope? That could be something they could do if they're looking at it and think, well, he's going to be out for the majority of the season. We've seen Newcastle United are open to being reactive to the situation while also having a plan and largely sticking to that in the transfer market.
And somebody's just made a great point here in the comments here. Graham has said, Aaron Ramsdale, a player linked with Newcastle for a long time, certainly in the last couple of months, looks like his time's up at Arsenal. If you're saying to me, would I prefer a long-term deal for Ramsdale or a short-term deal for De Gea, then it would be Ramsdale every day of the week.
There we go. Let us know in the comments what you think. Andrew makes a good point here. Like the other players that have stepped up, let's give Dubravka a chance. And we look at Jamal Lascelles, we look at Lewis Miley. And it was interesting, Eddie Howe was asked about it in the press conference, wasn't he, Aaron? And the question was something along the lines of, are you surprised? Are you shocked at how the squad have reacted? And he said, no, I'm not. And I think Andrew makes a good point. Let's give Martin Dubravka a chance, because he's more than a capable understudy to Nick Pope. And there's no reason why he can't step up and seize this opportunity like the likes of Lascelles have done.
No, absolutely. I didn't want to just completely disregard Dubravka there when I was talking about De Gea, but he is absolutely good enough to fill in for Nick Pope, even if it's just in the short term. And I think had he not burnt so many bridges when he left Newcastle to go to Manchester United, I think a lot of people would look back on Dubravka much more favourably. I mean, before Nick Pope arrived, he was the main man, and for so many seasons was such an important player in this team. And look, I think he's more than capable of filling in as a number one.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, let's talk about the other big news of the weekend, and that is the fact that the Tyne Way Derby is back in business, ladies and gentlemen, and I can't quite believe it. I am so excited for this. I have missed the Derby over recent years. I know Aaron's shaking his head, and we have this discussion quite often in the office. Aaron doesn't like it. He doesn't like that feeling. But look, I love it. I love waking up on Derby Day and it's just, knowing that if you lose, you're going to feel horrible. But knowing if you win, it's going to be cloud nine. I can't wait for it to come back. Aaron, just talk to us about that initial moment when the number, was it 27, I think it was pulled out of the hat?
27, yeah, comes out the hat. Look, I think we've been talking for years, haven't we, about wanting it to happen, and we sort of figured that it maybe never would in the cup, but we've got it. And the reason I'm shaking my head is because I feel like even though it was 2016 and I've had 7 years to recover from it, I used to absolutely hate Derby days when we were in that big 6 in a row period where every time we played them, no matter who the manager was for both teams, I just used to hate it because I hate the feeling of getting beaten. I used to dread the feeling of having to go through it again. Now I know things are different, and Newcastle United on paper should be putting Sunderland away, but can you imagine the stick if they don't?
But it's not going to happen. Newcastle United are going to win. You've got to be confident.
Also, what I will say is I think for the next month, we probably need to, even if we're not doing it publicly, we need to maybe privately become Sunderland fans and hope that they pick up from this poor period of form. And I can see Andrew looking at us there thinking, what on earth? But how many times did Sunderland used to sack their manager, get a new manager bounce just before they played Newcastle? And I can just see it now. Tony Mowbray sacked on Boxing Day, and someone like, who could it be? DeCanio, Martin O'Neill comes back in and rescues them. No, I think I'm positive, I'm confident, but I'm also just got a little bit of PTSD from 2013 to 2016.
Yeah, last time Newcastle won that fixture, 2011, and Ryan Taylor over the wall. And to be fair, look, you look at the FA Cup history as well. It's not good, and that we'll speak about that in a moment though, because the trivia is linked to it. Craig saying already heard the Mackham saying that Christmas is ruined, and I think that's the other thing. It's the banana peel feeling of it is that Southern fans are actually kind of already accepting, or some of the fans are already accepting that this is going to be a tough game against Newcastle, and that can sometimes work in your favour, actually. So Newcastle United have got to make sure they don't get complacent. But look, we've also not got to get distracted by it, because there's so many games to come, so many important games that Newcastle need to concentrate on the Everton game. They need to concentrate on Milan. They've got to concentrate on Luton and Forest. And, there are games here that are much more important in the next month, 6 weeks or so. Well, it'll be a month, won't it, before this game comes about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, it's going to be such a hectic period over Christmas, and also the start of that January looks so hectic now. If they beat Chelsea on the 19th of December, it's going to be Liverpool away, Sunderland away, a Carabao Cup semi-final leg 1, and then Manchester City at home, just the way Eddie Howe likes it.
Yeah, no complaints from him. He keeps saying if you want to be an elite team, then you've got to prepare for the schedule. And again, look, Nick Pope getting injured, it's another bizarre injury, and most managers would be crying about it, but he's just getting on with it. He's not going to make any excuses about it at all. And look, I'm getting a bit of stick here for my love of the derbies. Everyone's saying they hate derbies, but I just I just love the feeling. I love the build up, and kind of the jeopardy that goes with it. And now Newcastle United are flying high. Like, I know a lot of people want to see Sunderland drop down as far as they can go down, but I'll make this point, right? And I've made it before, and I'll get stick for it. But I would love, right? You're laughing. Do you know what I'm going to say? I think you might know what I'm
No,
going to say.
I'm just excited for every time you say I'm going to get sick for this. I think, ooh, come on, bring it on.
I would love Newcastle United and Sunderland to be battling at the top of the Premier League. Do you remember when Man City beat Man United to the title in the last minute, Aguero, and Manchester United ironically won the pitch at the Stadium of Light, and they were looking round, and then they see the scoreline. Alex Ferguson's got to wave them off down the tunnel. Imagine the feeling, right? You're Man City. You've just won the Premier League title. You've just won it in exciting circumstances. But more than that, you have beaten your local rivals to it as well.
But,
Imagine that feeling.
maybe you're just being glass half full and I'm half empty. But imagine if we're the Manchester United in that situation. Imagine thinking we've won the Premier League and then 5 minutes later we hear that actually Sunderland have won the Premier League.
Yeah, but then you go next season and you win it next season.
No,
I'd love to see them both competing at the top level.
Worst day of your life. Come on.
Okay. Well, look, I said I was going to get stick. I expected it from
You
you.
will get
in the
sick of that,
comments.
and I should have known that was coming because you've said that to me before. As much as I've just said we all need to be Sunderland fans for the next month,
Yeah,
I will happily watch them sit in the Championship or League One for the rest of my life and never have to worry about a derby again, please. Rather than have them back in the Prem. Never mind challenging for the Premier League. Are you mental?
Yeah, Philip says
Andrew
Andrew
in the Champions League, Andrew. Come on.
Yeah, look, you've got it. If you imagine beating them as supposedly like a good side, to look right. Let's look at it. If Newcastle beats Sunderland, which they should do in the FA Cup, people will think it's expected. Sunderland are a wee bit rubbish. They're mediocre. Newcastle are not. Imagine beating them where both teams are at the top of the game. Look, we could go down this. Aaron's going to switch his burner phone on and start giving us grief on social media. So I'll get ready for that in a little while.
A couple hours.
Philip says he's definitely team Aaron on this one.
Thank you.
Right. What I was going to talk about was Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp has done something which I would never thought he would do in a whole month of Sundays. And I'm going to play the clip because I could read you the quotes out, but it wouldn't quite do it justice. So let me play you this clip from Jurgen Klopp, and then let's work out just what exactly he's doing.
I don't think I ever praised Newcastle before, but I saw them playing last night and I was really impressed. I have to say, wow, they play the same team like they're pretty much exactly the same team like in Paris. And that was a big fight. Yes, it was not only a big fight, it was an exceptional football game. It was a commercial for pressing, counter-pressing, and direct football, really good football. So,
right, I did check this morning where the hell it frozen over, and it has not. And to be fair to Jurgen Klopp, the points he's making are 100% spot on. But why on earth is he making them? Now, the question was about the schedule, and he's answered that in terms of saying, well, look, we're not the only team, etc., etc. But it just feels unnatural to hear that from Jurgen Klopp, doesn't it?
I woke up and thought I was dreaming when I saw it. I mean, that's the first time I've actually heard the context of the question. I didn't actually realise why he was praising Newcastle and what he'd been asked. But I just think, is he maybe getting his mind games in 3 or 4 weeks early ahead of New Year's Day? I think that's the only explanation I can come up with. But by the way, what a compliment from a manager who, brought rock and roll football, as it was called, to the Premier League, and Liverpool, who've had this amazing press for years, saying that it was a commercial for pressing and counter pressing. It's a very, very, very good compliment from the club.
I mean, if he is getting the mind games going a good month before the clash, he's rattled then, isn't he?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was only being a little bit tongue in cheek saying he's getting the mind games, and who knows what goes through Jurgen Klopp's head at any amount of times. A couple of weeks ago, he said a match should be replayed, so I think, yeah, we just pretty much need to take what he says with a pinch of salt.
We've got Craig saying mind games from Klopp. Roger saying reverse psychology. Phil, Gary says he's playing games. I've been told to stop. Awful take on the time we had Derby. It's definitely going to come back and bite me in the backside, that one. Go on.
Isn't it funny though that we're all so paranoid that we can't just accept a nice compliment from Jurgen Klopp, and we're all thinking, oh, it's mind games, or he's doing it for this reason or X reason. Why don't we just enjoy the fact that Newcastle are now getting the praise they deserve?
Yeah, we could take that, but I feel like there's an ulterior motive working away. Was it because his side deserved to lose against Fulham, perhaps, and he's just deflecting? I don't know. There'll be lots of theories to why. Right. Shall we finish on a bit of trivia, Aaron? Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we said, Newcastle have drawn Sunderland in the FA Cup. And not only have they got to rid the memory of a horrendous record against Sunderland in the time we had Derby of late, they've also got to rid themselves of a horrendous record in the FA Cup of late. So I will warn you, this is not a happy bit of trivia, but it is the trivia nonetheless. So we're going to go back, Aaron, to the 2011-12 season. And I want you, from then on to last season, to tell me the team that dumped Newcastle United out of the FA Cup. I will give you the round in which they went out, and I will give you the result, and then I need you to tell me the team. So do you want to start from 2011-12 and work your way up, or do you want to work backwards?
I'll work backwards, please.
So 2022-23, Newcastle lost 2-1 in the third round.
That was to Cambridge United.
It wasn't. That was 21-22.
Sorry, they went out in the third round last year.
Yeah. A cool January night.
They went out to Sheffield Wednesday.
Excellent start. Yeah. And then Cambridge United, they lost 1-0, Kieran Trippier's first game. Then we've got 2021. They went out in the third round, 2-0 after extra time.
Don't think I know this one.
That was Arsenal. And then they got to the quarterfinals in 2019-2020, and they lost 2-0.
Was that Norwich?
That was Manchester City. Then you've got 2018-2019. They went out in the fourth round and lost 2-0 to a team now in the Championship.
That was
a team flying high in terms of form in the Championship, but they like to sack their managers quite often.
Watford.
There you go. 2017-18, they went out in the fourth round and lost 3-0 to a Premier League side, who also like to sack their managers, funny enough. I don't think they've ever been relegated from the Premier League. In fact, they haven't been ever relegated from the Premier League.
Everton.
No, the other side. Well, there's a few that haven't been relegated. Newcastle will face them in a couple of weeks' time in another cup competition.
Chelsea.
2016-17, they went out in the fourth round.
No idea. Arsenal.
To Oxford.
Ooh.
I'm just going to check that one because that doesn't seem right to me, but I'm going to check that one. But yeah, according to Transfer Market, they went out in the fourth round there to Oxford. Right, then we've got the third round. They went out 1-0 in 2015-16 against a team we've already mentioned.
Arsenal.
Watford. 2014-15, they went out in the third round against a team who are currently flying high in the Championship. They lost 1-0. Oh, I remember this game. Matt Ritchie got badly injured, if memory serves me correctly. Oh, no, that was too far. No, sorry, no, he didn't. That was the League Cup. We're talking 2014-15 here.
No idea.
Leicester, and then to finish off, we'll take it back 10 years. 13-14, they lost 2-1 to a team currently in the Championship, Cardiff City. I'll jump in and give you that one.
Yeah,
their record, Aaron, is quite honestly horrendous. Isn't it? It's just, how is it that bad? Hopefully, it's not that bad come the 6th or 7th of January, and they can beat Sunderland and get through to the 4th round. But yeah, this has been the Everything is Black and White podcast. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Please like, follow, share the podcast amongst Newcastle United supporting friends and family. You can head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. And for myself and Aaron, we'll see you guys very soon.